Hi everyone. Alright, so I thought I'll start off the month of July by releasing some objects that you guys can use in your scene. So I decided to release 6 3D scanned food objects, and all of these objects have been created using photogrammetry. And I've actually been playing around with photogrammetry for the past couple of weeks. And for those of you that are wondering what photogrammetry actually is, it's a process of taking a bunch of pictures and then you take it to a particular program that basically stitches these pictures together and creates a 3D object for you that's highly detailed and fully textured. So I definitely wanted to give that a try, and there was a lot of trial and error, there was a lot of failed attempts, but these 6 objects stood out to me the most, and I decided that I'm going to give it away to you guys to play around with these objects. They can come in handy for anyone who's doing architectural visualization and they need some objects that have some photorealism to them, or you guys can use it however you please, use it in your illustrations. But anyway, it's available right now on my Gumroad page, so you guys can check the description of this video. There's a link that goes straight to my Gumroad so that you can download these objects and analyze them, play around with them, and use them in your scenes. Alright guys, so anyway, I had a little bit of a slideshow over here. I probably should have clicked on play, but here's some close-up shots of the objects, and you can see even if we zoom in quite a bit, even with a close-up shot, these objects still look pretty decent. They look pretty good, which is really good. You can see that the photogrammetry has captured a lot of detail, especially on this pineapple, well, with most of the objects. And then obviously, like I said, these are fully textured. But there's one thing that's really important that I want to show you guys. So I'm using Cinema 4D. So I'm just going to minimize this, and I'm using Octane Render for my renders. You can see over here I've got everything set up, and this is probably also going to be common sense, but it's also dependent on what you're trying to achieve with your final image. But you'll see that just importing an object and applying the texture to an object is not enough. You can see this scene has some lighting, some soft boxes in these corners, and it's also got an HDRI image of an interior scene to just give the scene a little bit more believable lighting. So that's really important, guys, when you're using these objects, especially if you're going for something that's photorealistic. You want to ensure that your lighting setup is really good, because as you can see over here, especially with this donut, you can see this donut's basically capturing all of this lighting information, and it's making this donut look really good because this chocolate actually looks quite photorealistic. Alright, anyway, to demonstrate that, I'm going to create a new scene, and I'll actually import my donuts. I'm going to be showing you guys how I actually set this up, and like I said, this is for Cinema 4D, but these principles apply to majority of different 3D programs. If you know how to work with importing materials and you understand how the diffuse and specular and all of that works, you should be able to follow along. Anyway, I'm going to import that chocolate donut. So you'll see this will be located in the folder. You'll have your OBJ and then a Photoshop for the material and the JPEG. The JPEG, as you can see, everything's UV mapped. We'll just drag and drop that onto the object. Anyway, I'm going to import my OBJ into my scene over here. So just let that load. Like I said, guys, these are 3D scanned objects, so the objects are actually going to be quite dense. So the poly count is going to be quite high, and the reason for the poly count being high is because I wanted to retain as much detail and texture quality as possible, because they do give you the option to decimate these objects, which means that it tries to retain as much detail as possible by reducing the poly count, but Autodesk Remake doesn't do that great of a job by retaining too much information. And if I reduce the polygon count too much, we're going to lose all of this really nice surface detail that you see on this object, and it's just going to end up taken away from the realism from these 3D scanned objects. Anyway, we've got our donut over here, so I'll import my donut, and then since I'm using Octane, I'm going to create a Octane material. Now obviously with you guys, just create a material, and you want to import that JPEG of that UV mapped texture into the diffuse channel. So I'm going to go to texture, image texture, and I'm just going to load You'll see over here the JPEG. So open that, let that load in, and you can see there's a resolution over there. It's quite high, 8192 by 8192 times 24 times. Alright, and once that is imported, I'll just drag and drop that onto the object. Now, like I said, this is probably not enough, so if I open up the live viewer, just want to get rid of that. If I open up my live viewer, like I said, this probably is common sense, guys, but lighting is really important, and just messing around with the overall material type makes a huge difference in what we'll see in our final results. So you can see over here, just by importing and applying the material, the donut already looks quite realistic, but it's just not there yet. And I'm going back into the diffuse channel, and instead of diffuse, I'm actually going to change this to glossy. So you can see over here, once we change it to glossy, there's a lot of these specular highlights on our donut. So when we apply some lighting into the scene, it's actually going to capture that lighting information really nicely. But I'm actually going to add a little bit of roughness because I don't want there to be too much specular information. But you can already see the huge difference just by changing your material type to something that's glossy. Now we've got this chocolate that actually starts looking a lot more realistic on our object. So if I actually bring in a light into our scene, so I'm going to use an Octane area light. If I take that Octane area light and I position it on top of our donut, I can close that for now. If I enlarge this, I'm going to make sure that's rotated. Right, there we go. And like I said, guys, that makes a huge difference. You can see that this donut is really starting to look almost photorealistic right now. The chocolate actually looks quite real just by changing that material type to glossy, adding a little bit of roughness, and then adding a light into the scene. So just keep that in mind, guys. When you're using these objects, it's really important that the lighting in your scene is set up correctly to get the best results possible. Because, like I said, this is a 3D scanned object from a real world object. So as long as you have your lighting set up correctly and you have the correct material type applied, you're going to get some really good results with these objects. And as you can see in that previous image, so if I close this and go back, most of the objects in the scene is actually over 1 million polygons, and the overall performance, especially within Cinema 4D, hasn't slowed down one bit, but that's also dependent on what rig you have. So I'm able to still handle quite a lot of information before my PC decides that it wants to commit suicide and start melting. But anyway, you should still be able to use these objects for your illustrations or architectural visualizations without it completely desecrating your machine. Alright guys, well, I hope you find these useful, and if you guys are interested in me maybe doing a tutorial on explaining the process of photogrammetry and how I set up these objects and how I shot them and how we created these objects, I can do that. Just let me know in the comment section. That can maybe be a future tutorial on photogrammetry. But anyway guys, this is free. Go ahead and download it, have some fun with it. Feel free to send me examples of how you've used these objects in your scene. And yeah, I hope you find it useful, guys. Right, so thanks for watching and stay tuned for some more content. Alright, goodbye.